Great energy in the room. Thank you for letting me kind of take a journey back and share some reflections and maybe some lessons that I've learned over the years with you, and maybe something, hopefully there'll be something in there, a nugget that might spark for you as an individual to take away. Before I do get started, though, I want to have a bit of a disclaimer. And when Paul had asked me to speak here tonight, I always hesitate a little bit because I really believe we are all individuals, and there is no one right or wrong career path. Success to one person is not necessarily what success looks like to somebody else. So the most important thing is to be yourself. And you're going to hear me make some different quotes throughout the next half hour. But, you know, we're all born originals, and the worst thing we could do is die a copy. And the most important thing is to embrace who you are. So with that, I'm going to take a journey back in time. And if you would have asked me at 22 years old, my first day on the job at General Motors, where will you be in 5 years? All right, so this is a 22-year-old Janice, and you came up and you asked me that question. I was clear. I was going to be married. I was going to have kids. I'd work part-time, and I was retiring by the time I was 30. So, yeah, and you see that didn't quite work out for me. It didn't quite work out for me that way. It's hard to believe that it has been almost 30 years since I've been in the workforce. Time, you know, we get so caught up in the moment that you just wake up one day and time just has a way of getting away from you. And so I think it's important, again, that we all just also enjoy the moment that we're living. Now, by nature, I've always been a very, very hard-working person. And I recall my mother coming in, and I was in elementary school. It was 3rd grade. I was actually in the Detroit school system. And my mom somehow must have, I don't know exactly even why she was there, but she looked through the window in the door, and she must have saw me in the classroom. I went home that night, and my mom said, "Boy, Janice, you know, I looked in, and your head was down, and you were working hard, and all the other kids were running around and talking and playing." And I remember thinking to myself, wow, that's pretty good. You know, my mom saw me, I was head down working. No. To my mom, the most important thing as a young woman was not necessarily your grades. Getting a C and was fine. It was good citizenship grades. Now, did you guys have citizenship grades here in Canada? That was, for some are shaking yes, some are shaking no. And for those that come from even outside of Canada, outside of the US, you always get your scholastic grade, but then you also got a grade. It was like a 1, 2, or 3 at least for where I was growing up. And it was how well you were in school. Were you a good girl? As my mother thought was obviously, did you communicate? Were you social? Or were you a rebel rouser and always in the principal's office? So for my mom, she felt so strongly that it was all about the citizenship grade. So I went through school getting C's and really thinking of myself as best, as average. And it wasn't until high school that I all of a sudden realized, you know what, I could actually get A's. And if I apply myself, I can actually get A's pretty consistently. And I remember in the 11th grade telling my dad that, you know what, I think I'd like to go to university. And my dad, and bless his heart, he looked at me and he said, you know what, Janice, the reason men are out of work today is because there are too many women getting educated. And, you know, he was very clear that, you know, he was going to support me, but that he was in no position to support me financially, and that if I wanted to go to university, of course, that was going to be my decision and my burden to figure out a way too. Now, I knew my father loved me, but the truth was that, you know, we just had very different views, and things were different back then. So it was through tenacity, and for those here who know me, through my stubbornness, I was actually the first person in my extended family that ever actually went to and then subsequently graduated from my university. So my first job out of university, and actually I went to Michigan State University and graduated in material logistics management, but at the time it was in the operations area. So it was actually called operations management. My first job at General Motors was chasing parts, nuts, bolts, fasteners, and I wanted to be the best part chaser that I could be. And I wanted to work harder and longer hours than any of my peers, and I recall my boss at the time kind of pulling me into his office and saying, Janice, you're making the others feel a little uncomfortable. You know, you got to kind of, you don't have to work so hard. You can kind of tone it down a little bit. And funny enough, I don't think I really understood that whole conversation. I mean, I understood it in the terms of what he was saying, but it didn't really hit me what he was trying to convey, probably until years later. But about a year after starting, I had an opportunity. There was a promotional opportunity, and it was in one of the GM factories. And funny enough, nobody at headquarters wanted to work in a factory. They were tough jobs, and they were tough people. But there was an older gentleman that I worked with, and I remember his name to this day, Richard Mealy. And Richard convinced me that, you know what, Janice? Take the bold move. And we talk about the courage, and I'm sorry, Linda, I should have, we talked about the title of Take the Courage, Have the Courage Too, and it's, have the courage to take the bold moves and to really enjoy your career and have fun along the way. So he convinced me that that I should go and that I should expand my experience, and that getting factory floor firsthand experience was going to build my career for the rest of my life. And I have to say it was probably some of the best advice I had ever received. And in fact, I took the job, and having that opportunity really did not just shape me from a career perspective, but also at a very personal level. So my first day on the job, I'll never forget the superintendent. I come in, I'm all ready to get started. The superintendent, let's say he was a very charming man, and he walks me out to the floor, to the area that I was going to be supervising, and I was 20 enough. Picture this, I am 23 years old. I had never supervised. I'd never even read a union, and these are all unionized, folks, and never read a union manual. I had never supervised. And I looked at him, and actually I remember his name too, but I won't mention it. And I said, is there training? What's the training for this job? And he looked at me, and I'm quoting word for word, "Dear, sure there's training. It's called seat of your pants training." And I was, so that was actually not in my speech, but years later when I was at Ford, he was with a supplier, and he had come to me and was looking for business. So you can imagine how that conversation was nice and short. Everything in life comes around. So, so being the eager A-type personality that I was, I made mistakes right off the bat. First day on the job, the second shift supervisor shows up, and this man is a tall, intimidating man. He is a big guy, and just looking at him, he's intimidating. And I, again, being the hard-hitting and being the A-type personality, I quickly ran down, what did we do on first shift? And I ran down, what does he have to do on second shift? And he simply glared at me and said, "Hello, how was your day?" It is a lesson that stays with me today. And it also makes me realize that my mom wasn't too far off about the citizenship grades, by the way, right? You see, you can see the connection. So what is the first life lesson? It's not just about working hard. Working hard is the price of entry. You need to connect with people at a personal level and a business level. Ask questions. Listen with your eyes and your ears. Connect with people at all levels across the organization with what is important to them. Another quote that I really love, "It is more important to be interested than interesting." Now, this is something that I missed early in my career, and I find many women really do. We're so focused on validating our worth to the organization that we continually drive hard on the issue, pushing to make our point, when in fact we would be listened to more and go further faster if we periodically just hit the pause button and reached out to learn more about the people that we're working with, again, both on a personal and a professional level. Our employees, our bosses, our peers, and our suppliers. Connecting with people because we want to connect with them, not because you think you should connect with them. It's extremely powerful. It's not about being liked. By the way, another infliction many of us have, that need to be liked. It's not about being liked. It's about building support, alliances, and gaining insights you might not normally be privileged to. So the next time you're interfacing with someone on a particularly difficult challenge, before jumping right into the current issue, ask him or her, how are you doing? What's going on in your world? And really mean it. Before trying to make your point, first try to understand their point. Remember, much of business is conducted outside of the conference room. You want to be that person that other people want to include, that people seek out, not somebody that they avoid meeting with. So back to the story. On a personal note, I met my husband year one in the factory, and by probably the only thing the 22-year-old actually got right. And by year two, we were married, and his name is Ben. Now, in the factory, Ben was my savior. We still laugh about the time. I had 2 employees. I don't know if you guys have, I used to work in a big trim plant, and the cutting shears, the blade on these big cutting shears, so we made all the tops and the doors, everything soft inside your car was made in this factory. And so the cutting shears, the blades are like, you know, yay big. These are instruments. So I had 2 employees actually attacking each other with the blades. I think it was over a drug deal gone bad. I'm not really quite sure what the issue was. But so here I am, and I'm thinking, okay, what would a good leader do? You know, and that's maybe one half of my brain, and the other half of my brain is, of course, scared for my own skin. Ben, who was actually, I wasn't married then, he was running the area right next to the area that I was running. Good old-fashioned directive leadership. Here comes Ben, and he just handled the situation. So I still laugh. We still laugh about that to this day. Many other stories too, but I'll keep it to that one. Without his support, it would have been very, very difficult to make bold career and life moves. He has never complained, nor does he ever still to this day complain about long hours, and is always a solid sounding board. Now, after 5 years in the factory, I was ready. It was a great experience, and I value it to this day. But I was ready to go back to a more office setting. However, that was the time of quotas, and they needed women in the factory. So every time the world headquarters would offer me a position, the plant manager would just offer me the same promotional level and hence block my ability to move back. So while working on my MBA at night, Ford Motor Company was actually present one evening at the school, and I spoke to the folks, obviously went off, did an interview, they offered me a position, and it was actually a lower level than the current job I had. I had, at that point in the factory, I was the incoming quality manager. And so Ford offered me a position as a purchasing analyst at Ford. And being a lower position, lower compensation, I stepped back and looked at the bigger picture and realized, you know what, it's the right move. It's the right move for my career, and that's why I say careers are not a straight line. And this happened to be one of those times where I took that step back and I went to Ford. And I would not know it, I didn't know it at the time, and I wouldn't know it for years to come. But it was that move that allowed me to meet the single most influential person in my career and in my life. But I'll hold that story for a couple minutes. So, you're gonna love this. My first responsibility as a process purchasing analyst at Ford was to push a shopping cart up and down rows and rows and rows of 500 cubicles filled with what was at the time my aspirational job of a buyer to deliver quality, or Q1 if you know Ford, quality manuals. And I still remember it was like yesterday. I had one voice in my head telling me, hey, I was just managing a dozen people at North America's largest trim plant, and now I have to humiliate myself by pushing this shopping cart up and down the rows with all these people who obviously think they're better than I am. But then I had the other voice in my head saying, look, this is your job. This is a great opportunity to meet many, many people, get a much better feel of how the organization is organized, and start really, setting yourself up to create a network and make human connections. So I swallowed my pride, I put a smile on my face, and I decided if part of my job was to push a shopping cart delivering books, I was going to be the best darn shopping cart book delivery person that there was, and have fun doing it. And I actually recall the gentleman and I who both had to do it together, and we actually did make some fun out of it. So I decided to control what I could control, put a smile on my face, and deliver the books. So what is the shopping cart life lesson? Take the opportunity in everything you do to have that special spark. Go above and beyond. If it's pushing a shopping cart, or if it's delivering a presentation to the board of directors, enjoy what you are doing. That special spark will come through. Think of the people that you interface with today, inside work and outside of work, that you interface with in work and out of work. We all want to be with people that have positive energy, people that have a can-do attitude, not someone who's complaining, not someone who's a victim, but someone who is facing the challenge. We all face challenges. The difference is how we face that challenge. Now, over the next few years at Ford, I progressed through various buying roles until one day I was presented an option to become a sourcing manager or to become a supplier quality manager. The supplier quality job was a much tougher job. It was a known difficult team. They didn't have processes. I'd be supervising a bunch of engineers, which I knew nothing about. So again, stepping back and thinking that you would think the natural progression would be to take the purchasing manager role, I decided to take a bold choice and a bit of a risk, and I went for the job that was more, that needed more work, right? And that was going to be more of a stretch and more of a challenge. So taking the bold move, I accepted the supplier quality position, knowing I would be out of my comfort zone. That move helped me gain breadth and technical knowledge, as well as expand my leadership skills. So the life lesson for this: get out of your comfort zone. Content is actually Latin for contained. You don't need to change companies, and you don't need to change jobs to stretch yourself. Hold yourself accountable, not your boss. Hold yourself accountable to find opportunities. Speak in front of larger groups. Step up and lead a really challenging negotiation. Or if you see a particular challenge or problem in the organization, step up and bring solutions. Lead those solutions. Bring options and solutions to your boss, not problems. Volunteer to get involved and lead. Not only will you stretch yourself and learn, but you will be recognized as someone that goes above and beyond, a problem solver and a leader. Now, I continued to grow through various and growing leadership roles, and along the way, I was very fortunate to have found what I call my wingman. His name is Carlos Mazarin, and he was the Executive VP of Global Purchasing at Ford, a $96 billion buy, and he was also the president of Ford South America. He was a tough, tough boss. He makes me look like a powder puff. He always stretched us further than we thought we could deliver. And while sometimes he pushed so hard, I ended up in the women's restroom with tears in my eyes, I always faced him with a positive, can-do energy. I worked hard, delivered, and did my best to connect with him. Not by being in his face or being political or being too present, but by having a genuine interest in learning from him, learning by watching, learning by listening. Carlos would say, and does say, what does it take to progress your career? he would say hard work and IQ is the price of entry. But EQ, organizational intelligence, going above and beyond, and having that special spark is what's going to progress your career. Now, after Carlos retired, I began working for his successor. And while most things continued to go as they had, we actually had two very, very different styles. So much so that one day he called me into his office and said that he believed that my future career, now by this point I was already a director of purchasing at Ford Motor Company. He said I was too much of a people pleaser and that the rest of my career would be limited because I was a people pleaser. So after losing a night or 3 of sleep, I reflected on his comment and made a personal decision that regardless of his counsel, I was not going to change how I care about and enjoy connecting with people. So the lesson, be confident in who you are. You need to understand and fit within a company culture, but not to the extent of losing yourself. Be humble, be respectful, but be confident. Embrace who you are and always take a seat at the table. Now, after Carlos retired, we continued to periodically reach out and keep connected. And over time, our friendship grew. And in fact, today, not when I worked for him, but today, Carlos is not only my greatest mentor, but he is a dear, dear friend. And he continues to influence me in my career and in my life very, very much today. In fact, he knows I'm speaking here with you tonight. So the lesson. Wingmen look for people with that special spark, people with positive energy that focus on the how-to, not on the why not. For people that not only have IQ, but people that have EQ, up, down, and across. I often get asked, how do I find the right mentor? And the truth is, while you influence that, and there is no question, you don't necessarily select your wingmen. Remember, wingmen are people too. They also want to succeed, and they will choose to surround themselves with people that will help them advance their careers. More often than not, a wingman will select you. But be careful, you have to be ready. A good wingman is going to challenge you. They're going to push you, both on the how and the why. And you have to be ready to take on and embrace that challenge, or your relationship is going to be short-lived. Now, after Ford, Carlos became the president of a Magna division, and as well as a board member of Bombardier Recreational Products. And in his new role, he reached out to ask me a favor. He was asked by the Bombardier chairman, Laurent Baudouin, and the CEO, Pierre Baudouin, if they knew of anyone that could fill the CPO role at Bombardier Aerospace. As a new member of the board, Carlos wanted to make a good impression and connect them with someone that could just be a potential fit. And you recognize the two-way street of wingmen, right? It's always a win-win. Now, Carlos understood that Pierre was looking for somebody not only with just good supply chain skills, but someone that would fit into the culture and be part of his leadership team. So as a favor to Carlos, I agreed to fly in for lunch only with no real intention of moving to Montreal and no real intention of joining Bombardier. Long story short, 8 years later, I spent 8 wonderful years at Bombardier working with a great team. And together as a team, we transformed the supply chain organization. When I had started there at Bombardier, we had 20% voluntary turnover, an engagement score of 67, poor internal and external relationships, and our savings were not recognized by the business. By the time I left, we had 2.5% turnover, 92% engagement score, strong relationships, and every penny was recognized by the business. While at Bombardier, I grew as a supply chain professional and also as a broader leader. When Shaw called with an exciting challenge to build a supply chain organization, I knew my team at Bombardier was in a good place. They had strong leaders, a great culture, and solid process and tools. So while I was comfortable and very content, or maybe should I say because I was comfortable and content, I knew it was the right time to make another bold move. I have been at Shaw now for the past year and a half and could not be happier. As a company that grew through acquisition, as well as organically, they never had the need for consolidated strategic sourcing or for more advanced operational supply chain process and tools. At Shaw, we have a two-prong approach. One, develop and grow centralized strategic sourcing. Two, drive efficient and effective operational supply chain utilizing lean methodology, and achieve both of these with an empowered team that is energized, focused, and supported. We work hard. Maybe pretty hard. We work hard. But we are having fun, and looking back at the past year and a half, we are very proud of what we have done, but we are even more proud of where we are going. So let me close. I think we're at that time. I'm going to close with maybe just a recap of a couple of these life lessons, my life lessons. Have that special spark. This does not mean being political. It's your energy. It's how you embrace people and challenges. Are you someone that people look forward to meeting with? Connect at a personal level and a business level. Recall, it is better to be interested than interesting. Be humble and learn. Stretch yourself. When someone gives you feedback, don't deflect, but reflect. IQ and hard work will only get you so far. It is the balance of IQ and EQ. Listen first. There's a reason you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Be present. Speak with confidence. Be clear and concise. And finally, recognize the power in yourself. Go above and beyond, and most important, enjoy the ride. So thank you.